Are you okay with Washington taking nearly $1 billion from our nuclear defense to fund a foreign plane? Because that's exactly what just happened, and no one's talking about it. Let me break down the scandal they're trying to hide.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a dog in this hunt. I think, like Senator McConnell, we ought to be driven by the numbers. And in order to be driven by the numbers, you've got to have the numbers first. But I've sat here this morning, and I appreciate the bipartisan words. But with all due respect, Madam Vice Chair, when you say that the President of the United States has been bribed,
I said potential.
that's pretty strong. When you say that the director of the Office of Management and Budget is corrupt, that's pretty strong. And I think if you're going to say someone has been bribed or someone is corrupt, you ought to be specific. And I notice you haven't been. And I don't think this is, I've listened to a lot of pretty words about bipartisanship, but then we get personal. I don't think it's productive. It's up to you. This is America. You can say and believe what you want. But if you're going to say somebody's been bribed, you need to say specifically by whom, for what. If you say Russ Vogt is corrupt, I want to know what that means, with all due respect.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am going to be opposing the Shaheen Amendment and perhaps others that may be introduced with regards to this aircraft. But I don't want my no vote to be assumed that I'm okay with where we are with this transfer, that I'm okay not knowing the numbers behind it, that I am perhaps okay with the appearances because I have concerns about them. But what I have is the utmost respect and regard for the chairman and the vice chair of this subcommittee that have executed a pretty strong defense bill. And I am going to vote no on this amendment, but that is because I think the imperative in passing this bill overrides any concerns that I may have now about where we are with this transfer of this aircraft. I just wanted that stated for the record. Thank you, ma'am.
Are there other senators who wish to comment? Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And my intent is not to derail the underlying bill, but it is, and I would say to Senator Mullen and Senator Kennedy both, I didn't accuse anybody of fraud. I said it raises serious concerns about the implications. And I would say to anyone who was on SAC-D, if you haven't read the classified information about what is going to be entailed in producing this plane, you need to do that because there are serious questions that haven't been answered and they won't give us answers. So my concern is aimed at the Secretary of Defense, as I said, we finally got some insights when we heard from the Secretary of the Air Force, who admitted that the money's going to be transferred from the Sentinel program, which is already a concern for us. So I think there are serious concerns that are raised. I don't want to derail this underlying bill. I think it's really important for us to pass it. But I do think we ought to be asking questions about what's going on here because there are real ramifications for our military, for the Department of Defense, for our future. And I agree with you, Senator Mullen. We need to have secure planes for the President and Vice President to fly in. And what's going to be done as the result of this is not going to give us that secure plane. And spending $1 billion to do that, I think, is a real issue that we should all be concerned about. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to withdraw this amendment if there are concerns about it. But I do think we need to be paying attention, and we aren't currently.
I appreciate the withdrawal of the amendment. Are there other amendments?
I have a
Senator-
comment. I have a comment.
I'm sorry, Senator Reed?
Thank you very much. First of all, I hope my comments weren't interpreted. It's on. I gotta get close. Thank you. I hope my comments weren't interpreted as questioning the legality or of anyone's activities, but the fact is that this aircraft has been thoroughly considered for donations to the President's Library. We all know that. And this is not something that's going to go in the Air Force and just be another Air Force aircraft. In fact, it's ABC reporter, Attorney General Pam Bondi and Trump's top White House lawyer David Warrington concluded it would be legally permissible for the donation of the aircraft to be conditioned on transferring its ownership to Trump's presidential library before the end of his term, according to sources familiar with their determination. So the contemplation is very clear, and it's been documented. This is going to be transformed with Air Force money and then given to the library. I don't think that's an appropriate use of Air Force money. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Durbin?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have an amendment which I'd like to have circulated to the Department of Defense bill. Madam Chair, this amendment would ensure the Department of Defense funding is used for defense, not as a blank check for the Department of Homeland Security. A few years ago, with the passing of Senator Inouye, I found myself surprisingly in a position of chairing this subcommittee. It is an enormous responsibility. I salute Senator McConnell, Senator Coons, and one of the best appropriation staffs on the Hill for putting together this massive work. But what they've tried to do, and was explained by both the ranking member and the chair of the subcommittee, is to take limited resources and make sure they're spent well to keep America safe. What I'm addressing here is a practice which many members of the Senate may not be aware of. This amendment addresses the practice where the Department of Defense is called on to loan money to other departments, sometimes reimbursable, sometimes not. This bill would prohibit the Department of Defense from supporting DHS immigration enforcement on a non-reimbursable basis. In other words, if the Department of Homeland Security is going to spend the money for that purpose, let them do so. But if they're going to borrow it from the Department of Defense, pay it back. Immigration enforcement should be no different than other agencies. For example, when we have a natural disaster and the Stafford loan is activated, we have had instances in the past where the Department of Defense has provided the money to pay off for that natural disaster with the understanding they would be paid back, except in extraordinary circumstances. So it is done, but it's done on a reimbursable basis. So let's take a look at what's happened so far. So far this year, in the last few months, the Department of Homeland Security has borrowed $900 million from the Department of Defense not to be reimbursed. $900 million. The estimate is by the end of this year, it will be $2 billion. What does that mean? I'll give you an example. How are we going to house people who are being deported? You can house them through DHS facilities, or you can house them through Department of Defense. The decision was made, let's do it at Guantanamo. How does that sound? Well, let's take a look at what that is costing as an example. For 180 individuals to be housed in Guantanamo for the Department of Homeland Security on a 3-month basis costs $40 million. How much is that per night? $72,000 a night for each one of the detainees because they chose to put them in Guantanamo in a DOD facility and incidentally not reimburse the Department of Defense for the expenditure to do this. What if they used the DHS facility to house these individuals? How much would that cost, Senator? Less than $3.2 million for the same group of 180 million. Instead of a $72,000 a night place for them to sleep in Guantanamo, it's merely $7,000 a night. The point I'm trying to make to you is this going to be an expensive undertaking, this notion of massive deportation. It's going to involve moving around a lot of money in a lot of ways. Reconciliation already addressed some part of this. All I'm saying is that if you're going to borrow the money from the Department of Defense to pay for this massive deportation, pay it back.
Welcome back to Jace Manhwa. Before we get started, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the truth. Senator Shaheen just exposed a massive problem in Washington. Nearly $1 billion of your tax money is being pulled from our nuclear modernization program to retrofit a plane gifted from Qatar. Yes, a foreign gift, so it can be used as Air Force One. And no one will even give us a straight answer on the real cost. Some senators warned it's nothing more than a flashy trophy that could end up in Trump's library, while others argue it's for future presidents. But here's the real issue. Our defense money is being spent like monopoly cash while our military needs are ignored. To make things worse, another amendment to stop the Pentagon from paying for immigration enforcement failed by one vote. That's more defense dollars drained away from our troops and our security. This isn't about Trump. It's about a broken system in Washington that plays games with America's defense. We need accountability. We need strong leadership. And we need to stop funding political pet projects with our national security budget. If you're tired of this waste, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. Jace Manhwa will keep exposing what they won't.